All right, so in this explainer, we're going to dive into a pretty powerful story about BlackRock. You've probably seen this narrative making the rounds online, and we're going to unpack it piece by piece. We really want to get to the bottom of its claims about power and, who really has control in our world today.
So the source material we're looking at today really kicks things off with a dramatic question, just to set the stage. Imagine the world is on fire, right? Banks are collapsing, governments are panicking. The President of the United States needs a solution, and fast. Who's he going to call?
Well, according to this story, it's not the generals, it's not the spy agencies. No, the call goes out to a private citizen, a guy named Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. And his weapon of choice, it's not military hardware, it's an algorithm. And listen to this, it's described as being more powerful than a nuclear bomb. So right away, this quote just frames the whole story as one of hidden technological power.
So what's this story really all about? Well, at its core, it's a narrative about control. The argument is that BlackRock isn't just in the business of managing money. It's actually built a system to manage the entire world.
And to give you an idea of the sheer scale of this alleged control, the source just drops this one number on you, $11 trillion. It's hard to even wrap your head around that. But with that much capital under its management, the story claims BlackRock holds some serious influence over just about every major corporation you can think of. We're talking Apple, Microsoft, Google, all the giants.
Every powerful force has an origin story. And according to this source material, BlackRock's beginning wasn't just another business startup. Nope, it's framed as an act of pure revenge.
The narrative really lays out this dramatic fall and then this spectacular comeback. As you can see on the timeline, after this absolutely catastrophic trading loss gets him fired back in '87, he wasn't just beaten down, he was motivated. The claim is he set out to build a brand new system, one that would make sure a failure like that could never, ever happen again. And this whole journey leads to him creating the very tool that would become the bedrock of his power.
So, the real kicker in this origin story is the lesson Fink supposedly learned from that massive failure. Human intuition, it's flawed. Your gut feeling can't be trusted. The only thing you can rely on is pure, cold, hard data. And this idea became the absolute driving force behind his ultimate creation.
And here it is. This is what he built. Aladdin. It's an acronym. Asset, Liability, Debt, and Derivative Investment Network. The way the source presents this, it's not just a piece of software. It's more like this central nervous system for the entire global financial world. This story gives Aladdin almost godlike powers. It claims the system can basically see the future, predict crises before they happen, and even manipulate markets. The logic they present is pretty simple. If you control the data, you control the story. And if you control the story, well, according to this narrative, you control reality itself.
Now, the narrative then zeroes in on one single event that it says turned BlackRock from just a powerful company into something more like a shadow government, and that event was the 2008 financial crisis.
At the absolute peak of the panic, with the global economy in total freefall, the source claims the U.S. government was fresh out of ideas. So they turned to the one place they thought could help, Larry Fink and his Aladdin system.
Now, according to this story, BlackRock gets these government contracts to analyze and manage all the toxic assets that were poisoning the whole financial system. The source claims they use this insider knowledge to then go and buy up those exact same assets for pennies on the dollar and ended up profiting by over $1 billion when the market bounced back.
And this quote right here leads to the story's main point about the crisis. It wasn't just a good business opportunity for BlackRock. It was a transfer of power. By saving the system, the story argues, BlackRock actually made the entire system dependent on them. They basically bought their seat at the table of global power.
Okay, so that's the backstory of how BlackRock supposedly got all this power. Now let's take a look at the 4 key ways the narrative claims they use that power today.
The source narrative really leans on this direct quote. The point it's trying to make is that BlackRock's influence isn't just passive. It's presented as this active force, one that's shaping what companies do and what social trends take off by, in the words they attribute to Fink, forcing behaviors.
So, the narrative breaks down this control into 4 main methods. First, using their massive power as shareholders. Second, using ESG scores, that's environmental, social, and governance ratings, to basically reward or punish companies. Third, using a revolving door between their own offices and the government. And fourth, using their crisis playbook to gain even more power whenever there's chaos.
And this slide really shows you what they mean by that revolving door argument. The source puts this table together with some pretty high-level officials who've gone from top government jobs straight into senior positions at BlackRock, and vice versa. The narrative claims this creates a huge conflict of interest, and it just totally blurs the lines between public policy and corporate profit.
Okay, so moving on from how they supposedly control things today, the narrative then shifts its focus to what it claims are BlackRock's really ambitious plans for the future of our society.
The story directly ties BlackRock to this quote, which has been circulated everywhere and originally came from the World Economic Forum. The source presents this not as just some abstract idea, but as the literal endgame of BlackRock's strategy, a future where you don't own anything, you just rent or subscribe to it.
And a huge piece of this alleged future is moving away from physical cash to something called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. The narrative frames this as a major trade-off. You've got cash on one hand, which give you freedom and privacy, and on the other you have CBDCs, which the source claims would allow for total control and monitoring of every single transaction you make.
And the second part of this plan, according to the source, is this idea, the tokenization of everything. The concept here is that all real-world property, we're talking your house, your car, even your savings, will all get converted into digital tokens on a network, and that, the narrative says, would complete a system of absolute algorithmic control.
So after laying out this entire story, from the past to the present to the future, the source doesn't just end with a warning. It finishes with a direct call to action for its audience. See, it doesn't just lay out a problem, it actually proposes a solution. The call to action has three parts. First, become financially independent by getting out of debt. Second, secure your wealth in real, physical assets, things that can't just be turned into a digital token. And third, build up your spiritual resilience.
And in the end, the narrative leaves us with this final thought. It makes the point that all power, no matter how absolute it might seem, never lasts forever. And it leaves you, the viewer, with a big question to chew on. Is power today held by governments with armies, or is it held by private companies with algorithms? That's really what this story asks you to think about.